All right, what's going on, everybody? I'm here today with my friend, colleague, and coach, Tyler Weave. How we doing, brother?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing good now that I figured out the technical issues. So apparently I can't record on my phone. I'll figure it out later. Maybe we'll do that next time.
I mean, I know we're young and we should know these things, but
I
I
know.
think
Sometimes
technology
I'm
is
like a
surpassing us.
yeah. Sometimes I'm like a dinosaur of technology. I'm like, why can't I figure this out? What's wrong with
Yeah.
me? But anyway, yeah. So we're doing a little collab here because Tyler's going to be coaching me to my shows here in October on the 26th and in November. And we thought it'd be a really cool idea to document this. And like you suggested, Tyler, maybe like every 4 or 6 weeks, do a little like kind of podcast monologue type video here, right? Where we'll, pick a couple pertinent topics and dive into that for what, 10, 20 minutes or so and go over things and kind of just see how things are going. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And like today, we're like, no, let's just do like a review, right? Talk about go last year, last show where I was at, some of our strategies then, fast forward to today and see where our starting point is since my cut started on July the 1st. And as we're recording this, it's the 4th of July, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So I want to kind of catch everyone up to speed. My last show was November 11th of 2023. And when
Okay.
you and I started working together, Tyler, then that was September 20th. So it was about 7 weeks out then. And we were kind of cruising there. Calories in a good place. Cardio was very moderate. I mean, I was doing 40 minutes of moderate intensity cardio 5 days a week. Calories, I was at 280 carbs, 60 fat, and 185 protein at that time. So it was like, 24-ish hundred calories. We're kind of cruising. And then we made some adjustments, going into that show when things stalled out. I was also prepping for a photo shoot there. Um, going to a show, going into a shoot, you want to kind of, load going into that, right? But we kind of decided, just kind of push all the way to the show, and then, kind of go peek into that, and what's kind of like your rationale behind like the peaking, and then for like my situation specifically, why we pushed, like as hard as we did, because I'll tell everyone about the calories we were at then, but like rationale at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is because for most people, I mean, the show is the end goal. It's typically not a photo shoot, of course, unless someone is only just prepping for a photo shoot.
Yeah.
Um, and so if the show is the ultimate goal, we kind of need to keep that our focus. And so that it can be typically where having a photo shoot post show might be a better idea for a lot of people, just because you do want to look your best for the photo shoot, but you also want to look best for the show, right? Like that's
Yeah,
what you've been
definitely.
doing all of that work in for. And so I wouldn't necessarily, unless someone has, enough time and they are going to be ready in time, I'm not going to want to peak someone or give someone more food just for a photo shoot if that's going to take away time for us getting ready for that ultimate goal of wanting to step on stage. And so that's kind of where I'm always going to come from. If someone tells me that, like I have a client right now, she just had a photo shoot last weekend or the weekend before, but the ultimate goal is a show, in the fall. And so she
Right.
wanted to, push harder now for this photo shoot. And it's like, well, if we push harder now, I'm not going to want you to be, ran into the ground when we actually need to be pushing for the show. And so sometimes there can be that fine balance of how we're going to do this, but ultimately our job as a coach is to tell people what they might need to hear and not necessarily what they want to hear,
Yeah.
and really take a lot of that subjective emotion out of it and try and be really objective of like, yeah, I know you really want to do this, but what you told me, we might need to do something a little bit different. And then, I mean, just the pushing in of itself is, man, like we got to do sometimes whatever it takes to get someone ready for a show. And
Right.
as you get closer to that, especially if this is your first time working with someone like you and I, we just don't know where you're going to be. We have an idea, like, okay, yeah, we probably can predict you're going to be roughly around here. But as that person continues to drop more body fat, it's almost like you're starting to fill in the blank, right? Like, okay, like
Yeah.
you're starting to get a better idea of like, okay, you're 150. I'm looking at your pictures. You know what? You're about 8 pounds away. You know what? We've got 8, 10 weeks. We probably have to push to make sure that we're going to get there. So a lot of that comes down to just that communication, seeing the pictures, understanding how that person has responded over the weeks and the months, and where is their all of these things that kind of go into making those decisions as you're getting someone ready for their contest.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think in retrospect, doing a shoot right after a show is like perfect, right? And yeah, I totally agree with you. Just rewind one thing. I don't want everyone to think I started dieting September 20th for a November 11th show. You want to give yourself some time, you know? I started cutting July 10th. So that was about 4 months. So like if someone's like in, good shape, relatively lean, right? Decent amount of muscle, like 16, 20 weeks is kind of like, okay, we got to grasp on things. We're not just, new to tracking macros and that sort of thing. We go, all right, 16, 20 weeks, we could kind of fine tune some things because you're within striking distance, right? Kind of generally speaking, but just want to, touch on that. So we did have some stall outs right there towards the end, right? So the shoot was in mid-October, show was in beginning of November. I remember your first adjustment that we made. We went down to 225 carb, um, 50 fat, I want to say, and protein to stay the same. We made a little more progress there. We didn't do any refeeds the whole time because it was more like, hey, we got a certain amount of time. We got to make up for lost time almost, right? So we had a little bit of a stall out towards the end. It was like the last, I think, 3 weeks. I could confirm later, but remember we went down to 175 carb. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, I mean, hunger, it is what it is, right? I mean, you got your goal, and it doesn't really bother me, right? As an athlete, it's just kind of like it is what it is. There's like more like energy, right? And then like bring personal training studio and stuff, like work with my clients and stuff. It's like, okay, guys, hey, a little tired here. It's all good. It just gets to the point where like you're bending over to tie your shoe and like you're out of breath when you stand up. That's the hardest part. I remember right towards the end, and I went to the Olympia a week out from my show to hang out with everyone, and I remember we were down to 125 carbs. Like, all right, we're making a little bit push here, 1,600 calories. And that was the depths of it, right? And we went to a carb load. So real quick, let's talk about the rationale of, and we can probably talk about this later actually in this prep, but the rationale of like the carb load going into the show and then how we made our calorie increases, from like those 5 to 6 days out.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a big fan, and I think it's pretty common now at this point in terms of a peak week where you're doing a more progressive linear load when it comes to your peak week, where you are slowly walking up your carbs throughout the course of the week. Just, I think the simplest way to put it is like you just have more control
Yeah.
over each and every single day and how that person looks, because you are then checking in every single day, multiple times throughout the day as well, taking pictures, sending those to me, because we really want to see, how is the body responding to X amount of carb increase. Like, it's almost gotten to the point for myself where it's like, I almost don't want to write out a peak week plan because I don't necessarily 100% know how that person is going to respond every single day. I'm not saying you don't have a plan in place and your sodium and your water and carbs and fats and protein and all of that, but because you are doing so many check-ins, there might be those adjustments on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. But yeah, essentially, you're able to have a lot more control compared to a backload, front load. You're able to easily make those adjustments. You are really able to see how that person is responding on a daily basis, hourly basis. And yeah, I think it really leads to a lot more control. And because it is more maybe minute increases, you're able to have a much fuller, denser look without really overspilling. I mean, there still is that
Yeah.
opportunity to overspill, but again, because you are doing it on more of a day-to-day basis and not just throwing, let's say, a 600 grams of carbs on one day for someone, and then they're
Sweet.
spilling over, well, guess what? Now you've got to try and spend 4 days trying to get that person back. So now
Right.
we're looking at a lot more stress, a cortisol increase. Like there's just maybe a lot more unaccountable. So that's where that comes from. What was your other question?
No, that was pretty much it.
Is that
You
all of
kind
it?
of nailed
Okay.
that. Yeah, yeah. Because like we made about 100 gram of carb increase throughout the whole week. It was like
Yeah.
25 grams a day. It was like you said, minute different changes. It wasn't like these big drastic changes going, okay, 175, okay, 600 carbs. Like I couldn't even imagine front loading where you have like all your carbs at the beginning of the week, just hoping something good happens on Saturday, right? If you spill over, right, then you're kind of screwed because it's not like you do a ton of cardio and get it out of your system. You're going to be a little
Yeah.
flat,
And like,
or not
and it,
flat, but spill
yeah.
over.
And like the nice thing about that too is like you can easily save all of that data and then have that for the next time that you come around with a peak week with someone and go, okay, like you can compare the pictures. You can go, okay, we know we did X and you look like this. So for the most part, someone's going to be roughly the same, right? Like someone's stage
Yeah,
weight doesn't really change a whole lot throughout their years, especially if you're a natural athlete. Like you're pretty much going to be around
unfortunate
that
truth,
same.
right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? So the muscles just get denser. And so all of that data can really help then start to then even eliminate even more of the guesswork the more you work with a prep client.
Definitely. Yeah. It makes it just makes everyone's life easier, right? Who's involved, right? But yeah, and to fast forward into the reverse, it wasn't like, okay, peak, do the show, then, good luck. It was like I was very diligent with my reverse, bring those calories up, even probably a little too conservatively. I mean, I stayed really lean there for a little bit, December and January. And it worked out really well because holidays, I was able to have untracked meals with family. It was totally fine, right? And it kind of set me into a good spot where I'm at now to go back to a deficit because kept bringing those calories up, went all the way down from. I mean, you guys heard the numbers, right? I mean, I was down to what below 200 carb, right? Fats. I mean, we're down to 40 grams of fat. It was like, kind of rough territory. But you don't do it that long. And we come out of that, I went up to 75 fat, 380 carb, 185 protein cardio. 100 minutes a week across 5 sessions, so 20 minutes incline walking. I was doing 10% for a very long time, like a year and a half. And I was like, let me back to like 6% incline just so that next dieting phase we could use it to our advantage, right? That's why I tell people all the time, like, hey, if we are reversing, I'm kind of going a little rabbit trail here, but if we are reversing, we start backing off of that a little bit, not eliminate it, but back it off so we can use it to our advantage later. But anyway, fast forward to now, here in July, we started a deficit. And the numbers are almost exactly where I started my deficit last time. But I want you to tell me your rationale for why you started me at like my calorie deficit, cardio, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because you started at, it was like 27, 2,800, right? Like that's where we were. So if I like, so the amount of calories needed to kind of like sustain our energy when we're in a reverse or maintenance or a surplus, you know, it it's not too bad. But when we are getting into that deficit, you need to just be aggressive. Like you
Yeah.
need to kind of push that body and get it going because you are going to adapt over the initial 2 to 3 weeks. There is going to be that initial adaptation of about 10-15%. So typically I really like to kind of get aggressive right off the bat because let's dive into fat loss. This is when you're going to have the most energy. This is when your calories are the highest. This is like, let's take advantage of this time and let's get you into what can be called like a core dieting phase where we should be able to settle in with maybe some minor changes, but not too many, where 2, 3 months, 4 months, again, depending on the person, they should be able to consistently lose weight for that amount of time on a weekly basis. So you have those first 2, 3 weeks. You probably noticed a big drop that first week, or most people will. Less glycogen in the system, a lot of water drop as well, that leave with the glycogen. And so usually that 5, 7 pounds comes off fairly quickly, not all fat loss. Then we get into that second week and that third week, and that's where the body should now start to settle into what we should be able to now start to predict over the course of the next few months. So
Yeah.
that's what I love doing with people, is like, let's just get into it. Why wait? Why be not aggressive? Because the more we can diet on higher amounts of food, the better off we're going to be. And it kind of speaks to having this reverse, where if you can get up to that 27, 2,800 calories, we make that cut, you're still eating 2,400 calories. Yeah, you're going to notice some hunger, right? Just because you're used to X amount of food, and we're depleting the glycogen storages internally from the liver and the muscles, and the glucose through the blood system. So the body is actively going through this metabolic shift where it's now trying to utilize fat as its main energy source. So that's kind of why we're making this big aggressive change as well, where now we want the metabolism to shift as well. So you experience some of that initial hunger, some energy drop, the body makes the shift, week 2, week 3, right? And now we're starting to get into some actual fat loss here. And then, like I said, that week 3, week 4, depending on the person, we might have to make some minor adjustments, maybe lower that food just a little bit more to keep lipid metabolism going, or a little extra activity. And then from there, we're in that core dieting phase of just boom, boom, boom. We should be able then to look at your weekly, daily weigh-ins. And as we see those come, we should then start to be able to predict what we're going to see on a week-to-week basis. Like, that should become now almost a known for us. So that's where I always like to start off people with.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like we're starting to step to, even though we're trying to be aggressive, right? It's at a range that's not like brutally low, right? It's at rock bottom right off the bat. Like, I'm at 300 carb, protein's the same at 185, we're at 60 grams of fat. And cardio, we kind of up the intensity, right? I put in those, so for everyone watching, I'm doing 3 incline walking sessions, but we raised the incline from 6 to 10%. And I'll tell you that, it was only in April that I backed off from 10 to 6%. It really kicked my butt. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah. It's amazing how fast we can train sometimes.
Yeah. And then elliptical is tough too, going at a jog pace. So yeah, I really like that. That's the biggest notice. What I've been noticing the most, even just a few days in, is the cardio. I can tell I'm sweating a lot more. I'm definitely working harder. So getting that calorie expenditure side of things going, right? And if we need to make any adjustments, we're a couple weeks in, we'll do it, right? But things are in a very nice place right now. And so it's 5 days a week cardio. We're doing about 25 minutes each time, but the intensity is not like going for a leisurely stroll, right? It's like we're pushing ourselves there. And I'm training 5 days a week as well. So yeah, and then just real quick, just on training during a cut, whether it's for fat loss or even contest prep. I mean, we can talk about that. I'm more of a proponent of lower volume, because I mean, like, 3 really tough sets, I mean, that gets the job done, right? I mean, it's not like one exercise. I'm not saying go do like 3 sets and leave the gym, but like, for that exercise, right, instead of doing set after set, especially when you're in that deficit, right? Like, it's like, okay, we gotta be able to recover. We also gotta have that stimulus. But what are your thoughts on training, in a deficit, real quick?
Yeah, I'm pretty much along the same lines for any phase, for anyone. Like, less is more,
same.
Quality over quantity. Certainly when someone starts again, with a fat loss phase, whatever. Again, I'm not going to make too many drastic changes, because again, you still have a high amount of body fat. Your energy still should be pretty high. And so I don't think there's a whole lot of argument for just making those changes right off the bat. It's once we really start to notice recovery start to dip in between training sessions, strength really starts to fall off. Those are the type of like, biomarkers, I guess, if you will, that we kind of start to look at and go, okay, now let's maybe start looking at reducing some of that volume so we can keep that intensity up for that training session. I mean, you can also look at pre and post workout timing in terms of nutrition too. Like if someone's having some issues with recovery, that's always another thing you want to look at. So maybe it's not just going straight to cutting that, but that is something that is you want to pay attention to. I mean, I do have some clients where they're kind of fine. They don't need to make those adjustments, but yeah, certainly something to pay a lot of attention to, because the last thing you want is an injury, ligaments, tendons, things like that,
Yeah.
where you then now have to take time off from training or really trying to find how can I train around, whatever injury it might be.
Right. Yeah. And you want to do yourself such a big hole that you just like fall in it, right? So yeah. Yep. So yeah. And it's real quick. It's kind of a side thing I just thought of, but sometimes people are like, "Hey Ben, I only saw you put like on my back day, you put 3 sets of biceps at the end. Like, I was gonna do more. You want me to do 6 additional sets?" I'm like, no, it's like we're doing 9 sets of pulling before that, right? Not to mention like upper back work or whatever. Like, do we need set after set, right? It's like if the intensity's there, it's like that third set really should just be like the icing on the cake, right? But
Yeah,
so
it
yeah,
takes a lot less volume to maintain the muscle we have than it takes to build the muscle we have. So like
definitely.
it really is kind of unnecessary, and especially when food is getting low, cardio is getting higher, you're getting leaner, the concept and variable of recovery becomes even more important than just even like cardio or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
if we're choosing between getting an extra 30 minutes of sleep or going to do your cardio, I'm telling you to go get that extra 30 minutes of sleep.
Right. Yeah, you got to recover. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, last thing that we could tie into like anyone who's watching, right? And in your personal opinion, what is the importance of increasing calories? So going back to reverse dieting, even we already talked about this a little bit, but the importance of bringing calories up after a fat loss phase when the goal is continued fat loss later. Whether you are a contest prep client looking to do a show, right, or if you're just anyone looking to lose some weight, some more weight, after a dieting phase.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few reasons. In no particular order. I think one is the mental break, and like
Yeah.
the life break of just like constantly thinking about food and weighing out food and cardio, and like contest prep is a 24/7 job. Like there was a reason I stopped 3 months into my last attempt a couple years ago, because like 2.5-year-old, family, like it was
Yeah.
all I could think about. And it was not adding anything to my life. And so it is a 24/7 job. And so I think whether you're coming off 6 months of dieting, contest prep, whatever, just being able to have that break, go have some free meals, go enjoy date night again, whatever that might be, there's such a big benefit to that. I think very, very important. And then two, it's the physiological break. There are just going to be those adaptations that make it harder and harder to diet and to lose body fat and to get to where you want to go. And so continuing to push just isn't always going to be the answer, right? Like at some point you need to take that break and give the body a chance to come back to normal. It might only take about 8 to 10 weeks. So it's not a very long time for the body to get back to normal, which is kind of nice. But you do need that time depending on dieting history or
Yeah.
what happens,
It
right?
depends how low you've been on calories too, right? As well
Yeah,
as
exactly. And then I think the other one is like giving just us another great starting position to diet, kind of like we talked about here at the beginning of yeah, we were super aggressive. We essentially subtracted 400 or 500 calories a day, but you're still feeling pretty damn good. Like you're still eating 300 grams of carbs. Like when it's whole nutrient dense sources, 300 grams of carbs is a lot. Like
It's a,
that
oh
can
yeah,
actually be hard for a lot of people to consume. And so
yeah,
just giving yourself then that opportunity and more runway to continue to diet, that's going to be better off in the long run, for body composition. And then I mean, I think just I mean when we eat food, we look better. Like
yeah,
there's a reason it's called bodybuilding and not body dieting. Like the
yeah,
best,
really.
like there's a reason the best natural bodybuilders in the world are in their mid to late 30s. Like there's just a reason for that because it takes a long time to really accrue that muscle you need to get that body that you want.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about playing for a long term play, right? I mean, you got to build, right? You got to give yourself time, and you got to give your metabolism a break too, right? After a hard dieting phase, so that you'll be good to go later, right? I think that's you kind of lost a lot of people. It's kind of hard psychologically, but once you kind of understand the rationale, it's like, oh, okay, this makes more sense, right? And it makes you enjoy your life a little bit more where you're not at a sad calorie
Yeah.
level. But yeah, I think it's a great way to kind of wrap things up here, Tyler. We're gonna do updates, every month or so, see how things are going, and we're gonna keep everyone updated on the adjustments. And we're giving ourselves plenty of time, right? It's 17 weeks, or probably like 16 and a half or whatever now before that first show, and then about 19 till the next one. So things will change, and we'll put it all out there for everyone to follow along with.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Um, and I think it's gonna give people a really good insight into I think what a prep should look like. I mean, not that every prep is the same for every single person, but I
Yeah.
think a lot of the principles we're going to be talking about are, should be involved in a lot of people's preps.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and the other thing is, real quick as we wrap things up, like we do our physique pictures each week. We do measurements and stuff. I think it's really important for competitors to practice their posing year round. Like I've been doing my mandatory 6 days a week, just for 5 minutes, right? Just a couple minutes, right? And especially during prep, you really want to be doing that too, to nail that. And it kind of helps you see conditioning as well, right? So if we're doing we were talking about this the other day, right? Like if we're doing I'm doing my mandatories, for the pictures, you can see, okay, this is what we're looking like, week 1 versus week 7 or whatever, and you can still get an idea of conditioning and all that sort of thing too.
Yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
yeah,
We're always looking at specific areas as someone's getting leaner. So being able to have that just the same boom, 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 it makes it that much easier to kind of see those changes, especially as someone gets leaner, because they can be a lot more subtle.
100%. Yep. All right, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate your time, and I'll